Good afternoon and welcome to the Value Economics Show. Happy Monday to everyone out there. On March 13th, 2020, the Trump administration officially declared a state of emergency on the coronavirus pandemic. The virus, first becoming alarming the previous December after leaked reports from China, came upon American life very rapidly. No one thought it was a big deal at the time. No one saw it coming. Quote unquote, 2 weeks to slow the spread was the now infamous moniker. Upon the state of emergency being declared, many things happened. Anthony Fauci, a longtime government bureaucrat, instantly became one of the most powerful unelected officials in the history of the United States government, and in the modern era, the most powerful. Grocery stores were swamped and raided, leaving nothing in stock on the shelves. People were told to shelter in place. Apps for quote-unquote contact tracing were placed on mobile devices and rolled out by tech giants like Apple and Oracle. It wasn't that big of a deal, we thought. It's only 2 weeks. Well, the debut of this episode marks 5 years after that supposed, quote, 2 weeks to slow the spread should have ended. What we all know now is that not only did that not happen, but it was all overwhelmingly worse than we anticipated. Millions of people lie dead, many of which could have been prevented. Our government became as close to a totalitarian state as it ever has been before. Technocratic science-mongering became a cudgel against everyday Americans' inalienable rights. The whole thing feels like a fever dream, one we were lucky to wake up from. Every generation has their where were you moments. Where were you when Kennedy got shot, when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, when 9/11 happened? For Generation Z, the COVID-19 pandemic announcement will go down as the defining where were you moment of this era. For me, for example, I was watching the Survivor finale at my parents' house in Ohio, having gone home like many college students who simply and naively thought their spring break was simply just being extended. I would never enter a college building or class ever again after that announcement. There are many lessons to learn from the hysteria of the early outbreak of the COVID pandemic, but perhaps the biggest one, the one that we should be trying our best to rectify, would be who is most affected by the most drastic global manic episode in, at minimum, 20 years? Who are the biggest losers from this, and why? There were some groups that were more affected than others, obviously. Elderly people who have naturally less healthy immune systems than younger folks claimed the vast majority of the death toll. The immunocompromised were also thrown into this bucket, suffering horribly health-wise. Perhaps the most underrated and appalling were working-class Americans who served as the lab rats from the tyranny of our government. Whether it was getting furloughed, having the grocery bills inflated drastically, or being forced to take an unnecessary and mostly ineffective injection to keep their jobs. We must not forget any of these sins, because most of them could have and should have been prevented. However, the group that is least talked about in terms of the horrors of the COVID hysteria, the group that, in my estimation, is going to be the most consequential of the COVID fallout, is the one that we need to pay attention to the most, because they have very quietly secured the reins of American culture and life. They have had enough and are showing it in both subtle ways and not. It's their show now, whether people have noticed or would like to admit it or not. Young people. When looked at upon first glance, people may scoff at this. Young people have been known, particularly in the past decade, for being very loud and very open about what they feel is wrong with America. They've seen their entitlement, their narcissism, their wannabe elitism, and have done the right thing by dubbing them as childish and unserious actors. And I fell into this category. For the longest time, I dubbed my compatriots as a lost generation, one that would fall into the historical ether as a completely feckless and impotent epoch of American life. But I'm here to admit that I was wrong, completely and totally wrong, as a matter of fact. The biggest reasoning for my misjudgment of Gen Z, and I believe one that many others fall into as well, was one of simple miscategorization. This miscategorization is as follows. I simply thought that millennials and Gen Z and their attitudes and perspectives on the world were the same. Young people, quote unquote, are young people, I and many others thought. But Gen Z and millennials are not the same, as it turns out. In fact, they're quite different. One of my favorite researchers, Jean Twenge, for example, is the leading authority on generational differences in the world. In observing her findings from survey data, as well as general polling data in the last year, the gap between generations is not only getting wider, but it's getting vastly wider. There are many explanations for this, as well as many effects that are happening as a result of this. The most important explanation is who each generation was raised by. Millennials were raised by boomers, the most entitled generation in the history of the United States. that told them things like, if you want it, you can be it. Follow your dreams. Do what you believe is right. Couple that with the 2008 financial crisis, and you have a buildup of entitlement, resentment, and snobbery that manifested in things like influencer culture and the woke movement. Gen Z, by contrast, was raised by Gen X, who parented far differently than the boomers. They were much harder on their kids, almost to the point of being obsessed with their kids. They drove them to do multiple pay-for-play sports, for example, shelled out thousands for tutors for every class and exam, and shepherded them across the country to shop at the best colleges. Couple this to the COVID pandemic, and you get something entirely different than what happened with the millennials. The vast majority of Americans, myself included, thought that Gen Z was going to adopt a similar emotional posture towards the world that the millennials had. But that has not happened. Instead of entitlement, resentment, and snobbery, the emotion that most defines Gen Z, particularly after the COVID pandemic, was completely unexpected at the time, but completely logical in hindsight when looked at in plain sight. Anger. Gen Z is pissed off. Very pissed off. They're sick of the madness, the arrogance, and stupidity of people who claim to know better than them, the out-of-control nature of seemingly everything. They're a kid at a theme park who took on a roller coaster that was a bit too much of a stretch for them. They've already experienced what the ride entails. They want to get off, and they want to get off now. But throughout their most consequential and formative years, they were not allowed to. When you think of the tyranny of our government and ruling class over the past half-decade and how it affected young people specifically, the findings are nothing short of appalling. Millions never got to go to their senior prom. Millions more never got to walk across the graduation stage in either high school or college, or perhaps both, depending on where you lived. They were demanded at the point of force to stay away from their family and friends. You don't want to kill grandma, do you? Any dissent, and they were labeled as foolish, impotent, and stupid. The adults are in the room, you rube. Shut up and obey. Well, what did most young people do to cope with this? Well, most of them sucked themselves into isolation. Young men turned to online pornography, young women to TikTok. Mental health disorders in Gen Z have spiked by dramatic numbers. The suicide rates are up. For the past 5 years, Gen Z has directed their anger internally, waging a war on their bodies and minds due to their frustration with the outside world. But now this is beginning to change, and rapidly. The defining cause of millennials was social justice, defined by movements such as Black Lives Matter and LGBTQ pride. But when you look at Gen Z, this completely flips around, to the confusion of most people who lump millennials and Gen Z together. Instead of social progressivism, Gen Z has taken the opposite approach, social conservatism, most defined by Donald Trump and the MAGA movement. This is backwards compared to what is propagated in our media. Young people hate Donald Trump, they claim. They think he's a bigot, a monster, a racist, a transphobe. But do they? It turns out Gen Z actually likes Donald Trump. A lot. The most devastating polls for the future of the American left have proven this in spades. Gen Z, across all genders, ethnicities, and locations, is swaying dramatically right, with some saying that Gen Z is becoming by far the most conservative generation in recorded American history. Data from Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA, for example, says that in most to all of the previous 7 swing states, Donald Trump was able to win by small margins in small pockets. Kirk himself went to over 100 colleges in the final stretch of the campaign. And think of the universities in those swing states. The University of Wisconsin-Madison, Penn State, Arizona State, the University of Georgia, both the University of North Carolina and Duke. According to Kirk on a post-election podcast with Megyn Kelly, he claimed, in my estimation accurately so, that even moving 1% of those young people, those Zoomers, on those specific campuses, won the election for Donald Trump. This has never been the case with young people. Your liberal, young, and conservative late people have said. But it now seems to be the opposite. So why? Well, for starters, it's not because, like some people would lazily claim, that Gen Z is somehow a return to a non-existent, bigoted, misogynistic, and racist past. When you look deeper into the sympathies of Gen Z, the overwhelming majority generally don't care about social activism or justice. Being generations removed from those fights, they've largely taken those issues as baked into the American cake. What it is a return to is something I don't believe is accurately defined as conservatism. Rather, I believe it's something much more optimistic and much more sustainable than a simple political ideology. Traditionalism. What Gen Z wants more than anything else is to have things be normal. They don't have the dreams of the millennials or the boomers. They're far less quote unquote aspirational in that sense. They prefer to have their feet firmly planted on the ground. Theologian Owen Strachan, one of the smartest and most thoughtful commentators of our time, has dubbed this the normie revolution. What is cool to Gen Z, what is quote aspirational to the next up-and-coming generation of Americans, is what the American dream was always meant to be. Accessible, affordable, and repeatable. Trivial things like politics and skin color are a waste of time to them. They'd much rather have what Russell Kirk has dubbed the permanent things. Pieces of life that will always be valuable, no matter who or what you are. As put by Strachan, quote, "The next big trend in the West is the normie revolution. Many young men and women are choosing to rebel against, quote, fluid modernity and raging instability as they turn to Jesus, invest in a church, serve their community, work hard, and raise kids. Beautiful. These young men and women have grown up in broken or frozen homes, faced digital addiction, suffered in lockdowns, and taken pills to find happiness. None of that helped. So they want love, forgiveness, purpose, hope, identity, and stability. Jesus offers it all," end quote. Out of all the proclamations on what is happening with Gen Z, particularly since I am one, I've yet to find a statement more accurate than this one. Strachan, a genuinely good man with an incredibly well-tuned cultural compass, is absolutely correct. The past 10 years of madness, amplified by COVID and the woke reign of terror, have permanently scarred Gen Z. They've seen the brokenness, desolation, and devastation of the millennials, and are wisely steering as far away from it as possible. Perhaps it's because I associate most with people who, to some degree, identify as a member of the normie revolution, but I can tell you firsthand that Strachan's theory is absolutely true. Countless young men have told me that they want to be a provider, never want to have their kids touch a public school, and want to step up in their faith so they can lead a family spiritually. Countless young women have told me that they would prefer to be a mother over a laborer, have more children than the current birth rate, and want to be led spiritually by a man. Lampoonish memes of Andrew Tate and trad wives aside, the traditionalism sweeping young people is largely going unimpeded. If anything should make you optimistic about the way our world is trending, it is unequivocally this phenomenon. If the younger generation is able to adopt and keep traditional values, America will be fine. Tradition is what built this country, and what has built all great countries throughout history. Modernity, in many lenses, is a great thing. But the one thing it's terrible at is the one thing we need now more than ever. A compass, a guide to a better future, a bulwark against the insanity of the past decade. Gen Z has smartly, and more importantly wisely, noticed this, and has made an effort to promote it. Donald Trump may have been the catalyst, but he's only the canary in the coal mine of what is to come. King Randall, one of the great leaders of Gen Z and the founder of the wonderful X-School for Boys in Georgia, recently appeared on Glenn Beck's show to talk about this exact topic. Beck, who had spoken at Jason Whitlock's Roll Call conference the prior year with Randall, which I attended, was blown away by just how much he had accomplished with predominantly young black boys in a forgotten town in Georgia, and wanted to know his opinions on where he thought the future was headed. In an unexpected response, King Randall made a very bold claim. Gen Z is going to save America. We're the ones that are going to right the ship, to restore our communities, to heal our families, to inject faith, virtue, and vitality back into the culture of our country. To further illustrate this, he gave his own name to Gen Z, one that is very fitting of both his and Strachan's description. The Joshua generation. Joshua, for those unfamiliar, was Moses' successor after he led the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt. He was tasked by Moses as one of the righteous few, the leader that would fulfill God's covenant to take back the promised land that God had given to Abraham. Joshua was a warrior and a leader, a man who saw evil in the world and led people around him, his people, his family, his community, to snuff it out for something far better. One of the great heroes of the Christian faith, he is an example for all of us, and one that we should not take lightly. Time will tell if this trend will continue to bear fruit, but for our sake, and for the sake of our country, we should be on our knees every morning praying that it does. Now let's get into our stories. Okay. So, Going off of this atheism trend that we're all seeing here, I think this is a very interesting story that we want to discuss and that I want to really draw attention to. So on the point of conservative revolution that we're seeing, again, I don't think it really is a conservative revolution. I think it's more of a traditional revolution, which I'm in favor of, to be honest. I don't want just a conservative revolution. I think a lot of conservatives or conservative ideas are kind of, it just doesn't really matter. Politics doesn't matter all that much. What matters is the values of those people that are taking that as the point of this show. That is the point of the value economics movement. That is the point of everything that we do here on this platform, and I try to evangelize inside of my content. So I don't think describing it as a conservative thing in general is right. I think more accurately, it's put as a return to, like I said, traditionalism, which we're seeing in both constructive ways and destructive ways, right? So all of these things have trade-offs, and what we need to do as value-oriented people is really put a pin in all the things that are bad and elevate the things that are good. And what I think we're seeing more broadly is a rejection. Like I said earlier, I think Gen Z has clearly rejected wokeism. They've rejected this kind of, shallowness that the millennials had in general, not all millennials obviously, but in general. But I think what we're seeing broadly is a rejection of, if I were to sum all of these things up, and a lot of the commentators that I really respect have all pointed this to this point, and I think it's accurate, of this kind of cultural nihilism and meaninglessness and shallowness that we're seeing in a lot of people. And it's interesting because, the amount of people that are going to church now in young generations is really, really astounding. It's far more than the millennials did. I think there are a lot of pockets of people that are getting more into, more hardcore versions of Christianity, like Catholicism and Orthodox Christianity and everything else, the really kind of traditional versions of the Christian faith. The amount of young black influencers, for example, that are converting to Islam, like, Devin Haney, the famous boxer, Gervonta Tank Davis, the boxer that is probably the pound for pound one of the best in the world right now. Andrew Tate, like I mentioned earlier. It's kind of a rejection of kind of this meaningless, everything is meaningless culture, and we're going into this place where we're seeing a big schism in the country and in a lot of groups of people between people who believe in a God versus people who believe they are a God because they don't believe in a God. And I think the most interesting place where this is taking place is, ironically, in the conservative movement, because conservatives were the Bible people. They were the thumpers at the top of the pulpit saying all these things, whatever. But we are seeing multiple breakdowns in conservatism right now. I think this is really interesting because this is why I'm registered as an independent. I'm not a registered Republican for this reason, because I think all of this is kind of manifesting in a very, very different way that a lot of people thought it was, because all ideologies eventually corrupt themselves. All of them do, whether it's a left-wing ideology, a right-wing ideology. If there is nothing greater than that ideology that you can grasp onto, it's going to fail. Trumpism will fail. Populism will fail. Conservatism will fail. Leftism will fail. Whatever, republicanism will fail if it is not tethered to a greater and higher authority and higher power. So and I think people are looking at the conservative divide right now as something that is more shallow than what it actually is. I think we need to dig deeper inside of all these things. And so it's not just among people who are the anti-Trump people or not. It's not Trump in the swamp. It's not the people in Trump's own cabinet, which are clearly there that are trying to sabotage him right now. They're very close to him, which is, a very big lapse in judgment by Donald Trump. He's never been the best in terms of judging who should be around him, and that's clearly happening again. It's probably going to end up torpedoing his presidency, and probably closer, I think, and I would bet probably closer to now than closer to later, but that's not what we're talking about. But if you look deeper, you will see that there is a clear divide based on one thing, and that's whether people believe in a God or not. And I mentioned a God. I am a Christian. I believe in the Christian God. I do not believe in the Jewish God, the Hindu God, the Muslim God, whatever. I am a Christian, and I'm standing on the Bible. I'm standing on that word. But I do think that there is a commonality, and this is not universalism. This is not saying that all these things are coming together. But I do believe that there is a certain reverence that people who believe in the divine, in whatever fashion they believe in the divine, have, and in common with one another versus the people that don't. And I think this is kind of very much happening with the right now, with the American right especially. And the religious right, there are prominent people like Tucker Carlson, Vivek Ramaswamy, Candace Owens, Jason Whitlock, and they're, by the way, all different religions. Tucker is Episcopalian, Vivek is a Hindu, Candace is a Catholic, Jason is an evangelical, coming into conflict with the secular right. And I'm talking with people like Douglas Murray, James Lindsay, Charles C.W. Cook, Konstantin Kisin. And this is like this influencer war that's kind of going on right now with with the right and what I call the woke light, what a lot of people are calling the woke lights, the people that are getting very, very upset and acting like leftists about everything, which include people like James Lindsay and Konstantin Kisin and Charles C.W. Cook and Douglas Murray, who are very anti-Trump, who are very anti-religious right. They are getting very, very angry with him. But I will say a lot of the secular right does have valuable things to say, especially Douglas Murray. And this is actually ironically coming out on the day before that he's releasing his new book, which I don't know if I agree with it. The Middle East conflict is very, very complicated. I don't like seeing people die. I kind of am against both people, to be honest, because I don't like people killing each other. I'm pro-life in every way, and it's funny how that goes out the window from the right anyway, because people like to say they're pro-life until they want to drop bombs on people, and that goes out the window, funny enough. But regardless, Douglas Murray is probably the most intelligent commentator on domestic politics I've ever read. He's unbelievably smart. The Strange Death of Europe predicted what's happening now with immigration, Madness of Crowds, The War on the West. They're all phenomenal books. They're great reads, and I highly recommend you read all of them. I have them on my back shelf back here. And it's additionally also very good that there is debate happening in these circles, which differentiates us from the left. Because even going back to like the H-1B visa thing, where, Vivek and Elon got in trouble with Steve Bannon and Batya Ungar-Sargon, all of whom I really like, by the way, especially the former three. Musk, I'm kind of like, when I like Elon, but I don't know if he's really conservative at the end of the day, but regardless. But we're seeing this rise of this movement between atheism on the conservative side and belief in God on the conservative side. I don't even know, I'm blanking on the word right now, but we're seeing this kind of atheistic conservative, religious conservative mashing going on right now. And I think that is the line that we're drawing here. That's kind of going to be the whole theme of this whole show. And I want to draw a line at where atheistic conservatism falls flat, because it does fall flat. The reason why atheistic conservatism falls flat is that they have no reverence for the initial things that gave their opinions merit. So let me take that apart a little bit. If you merely take these ideas at face value, these conservative principles, quote unquote conservative principles, whatever, they will mean nothing to you, and they probably should mean nothing to you, because if you have no internal compass, you have no leg to stand on. So people like to say, that they are for the First Amendment. Well, why? Well, because I stand for free speech, but why? And then they go on these kind of circular Enlightenment arguments, whatever, but they don't realize that all of those things come from the Bible. They come from the eternal Word of God that is very open for all to see. All of these things that we take for granted, whether it's democracy, whether it's our inalienable rights, whether it's our Constitution, whether it's everything, they all come from a divine source. And when you do not acknowledge that divine source, when you say that, I'm just going to take I'm going to take this apart from this and I'm just not going to look at that thing, that does not do anybody any favors. And it also I don't think it really makes you a conservative, to be honest. Like, I really don't think in a lot of ways, when you look at these things, I don't really think James Lindsay is a conservative. I don't think Konstantin is a conservative. I don't think Douglas Murray is a conservative. I don't think Charles C.W. Cook is a conservative. I think they act like leftists a lot of the time. And I like what some of those guys say, especially Douglas Murray, like I said. And I do think Douglas is probably the most conservative out of those four. But, they act in a way that's just completely incongruent with so many other people and so many of the quote-unquote conservative principles. Because at the end of the day, conservatism is conserving things. It's in the word. It's definitional. So you cannot claim to be a conservative and not understand what you are conserving. You cannot do that. 2 + 2 does not equal 4 in that equation. I want to say this too. I am not advocating at all for a theocracy. I think theocracies are bad. I think what they're doing in Iran is bad right now with that theocracy right there, with that jihad that they have running over there. I think the United States demanding that everyone convert to Christianity at the point of a gun, that is anti-Christian by definition in terms of that. So I'm not advocating for that whatsoever. But what I'm saying simply, there needs to be reverence for the divine in some way if we are able to keep things in check. There needs to be, because if there's not, then again, ideology, if it ever elevates above religion, that is the death of a culture. That is the death of a society. I think that's the true thing with radical Islam versus Islam, with radical Christianity versus Christianity. If you have to put a qualifier in front of a word, that word no longer has any meaning. By definition, that is how words work, if you did not know. So that is why I think this debate between this atheistic conservatism and this religious conservatism is such an important one, because you cannot be a conservative without knowing and having something to conserve. And so I want to continue on this atheism point. because this leads into a broader conversation about atheism generally. And my favorite sentence to say when it comes to faith is that I don't understand how secular people exist. I really don't. I really don't understand how they do it. And so I was a secular person for a very long time, which is really interesting because I look back on that time period and I'm like, I don't know how I did that. I have no idea how I lived like 22, 23 years without devoting myself to a higher power. And I was raised Catholic and my parents did the best that they could and all these type of things, but I never really had a religious backdrop for my life. And I could never see myself going back. Like I think if someone, and I think this is honestly, and maybe I'm just talking a big game about myself here, but I think if someone came up to me at a point of a gun and said, hey, you either give up being a Christian or I'm going to shoot you, I think I'd probably take someone shooting me, to be honest, because it's just, or I definitely would. I'm going to say I definitely would take someone shooting me. I don't think I could live without my faith, which makes every attack on religion, on religious rights, on religious liberty, religious freedom, so unbelievably appalling. Because when you take that value system and you cut it out at the knees and you say to someone, you cannot practice your religion that you want to practice, that is an evil thing to do to somebody, an evil thing to do inside of a culture, which is why these theocratic nations who kind of say, you have to convert to this or we're going to kill you, this, that, whatever, those are evil, evil people running that evil regime. And I'm saying evil deliberately. It is an evil thing to do. And so this is why I also think that these kind of like wild atheist people are also acting in kind of an evil impulse, because I think atheism is a fundamentally broken argument. I believe that it's broken. I don't believe that you can make a rational case for atheism. I don't believe that it's possible because it doesn't really offer any redemptive leg to stand on. There's really just it's kind of just a void. It's a maw of just things that you don't really understand and you don't really have any principles to it. That's kind of the basis of the religion. You don't believe in anything. And so how does that work? And I don't believe it does work because, again, we talk about values on the show. We talk about getting to a place where value-oriented people can have a place to go and content to absorb and get things around other people. So why does that not work? The fundamental reason why atheism doesn't work is that all of them are at some point and in some way tremendously ungrateful. And that's a bold statement. Atheists are ungrateful because they take for granted all the good of religion, regardless of what that religion is, but especially Christianity in America. They take for granted all that all of those religions have brought to them. All good things come from God. I believe that what the Bible says is true. All good things come from God. And the old saying says that, the Bible says that, whatever. And everything that is divorced from a higher meaning and power is inherently destructive, especially ideologies, especially movements, especially people that take all of these issues and say that we're just going to, have, our way with this thing and our ideas are going to be enough and we don't really need an eternal significance. We don't really need a higher morality, a higher power to dictate all of these things from people. I don't think I don't think it's right. I just don't think it's right. And it's something that has really bothered me about all of these kind of radical atheists that are saying like, we need to do this, we need to do that. It's like, well, why? Like, who's telling you that? Are you telling yourself that? Probably. I know probably God's not telling you. Oh, I know for a fact God isn't telling you that because you're an atheist. You don't believe in God. And so I'm kind of done with all of these people who come and say like, oh, you should listen to me. Why? Because I'm like a smart person and I know better than, these rubes that kind of cling to their sacred texts and do these religious practices and things like that. It's like, dude, like, I just don't even take those people seriously anymore. It's a childish argument. It's inherently a childish argument because that leads to a sense of destruction. Because if you don't have a guiding principle, if you do not have eternal principles, eternal values guiding your compass, you will then act like a 2-year-old. By definition, you will act like a child. And I think the irony about this and why I think it's just unbelievably frustrating for me to see all of these people kind of occupy space in the public square is they love the fruit, but they hate the tree. That's my favorite analogy about atheism. So atheists love what religion brings to people. They love democracy and inalienable rights and human rights and laws and everything that kind of comes from a religious structure. But they don't like the religion itself. They want to say, okay, I'm going to pluck the apple off the branch, but I'm just going to neglect the apple tree and let it kind of fester and die and hope that it just keeps sprouting out apples from its branches. That's not how this works. It's not how it works. They love the fruit. They hate the tree. They do not want to take care of the initial thing that is given them all that is given them. Again, with the point of them being ungrateful. This is where their ingratitude really starts to show. They love all the things that come from religion. Like I said, they love democracy. They love human rights. So they claim to, which I would argue maybe against that as well. But yet, they don't like where it comes from. They don't like at the end of the day that Jesus says you have to lay all things down and follow him. They're like, well, I don't want to do that. I'll take all the moral teachings, quote unquote, whatever that means, again, because they don't believe in a higher morality. I'll take the moral teachings. I'll take this analogy that I like. I'll tattoo this verse on my arm, whatever. But, I'm not going to go to church. I'm not going to be with the religious people, the quote-unquote Christian people, whatever, the churchy people. I'm not going to, give 10% of my income to my local church. I could use that money for other things. God doesn't need my money. Why is church asking me for my money, et cetera, et cetera. It's an argument when you spin it around and around and around and around. It just doesn't make any sense on a fundamental level. Like it's a very easy equation to figure out. But yet these people, they just keep these atheistic conservatives, especially these atheist liberals, atheists in general, like they at least have kind of an excuse for it. But the atheistic conservatives, man, they just keep spewing this nonsense over and over and over again and just shitting on the one thing that brings any of their ideas merit, which is religion. And they just dump on it constantly over and over and over again. And the thing that gets them about all of this is that they're running away from the one thing that everyone needs to do in order to get better and improve, particularly if you're a value-driven person, which is the truth. The truth. They do not want to acknowledge the truth of the ideas, which is to acknowledge that there is a higher power. There is someone that has power over them. There is someone that is up wherever they believe up is and commanding the universe in some way, shape, or form. God, Jesus, Allah, all the Hindu gods, whatever they believe in. If they don't have any of that, they are blind to the truth. They don't understand what they are talking about. Fundamentally, they don't understand it because all of their ideas, all the things they're quote unquote conserving are the original things, like the permanent things. Russell Kirk talked about it. It's one of my favorite phrases ever. The permanent things. Why does the family matter? Why does your community matter? Why does law and order matter? Why does civility matter? Why does virtue matter? You can make all these kind of airy-fairy, philosophical, David Hume, Enlightenment-style BS arguments all you want to. But unless that argument contains an eternal perspective, unless it contains Jesus, unless it contains the God of your choosing, I believe in Jesus, whatever God you want to believe in, you will not have the truth. You will not have it. But if you don't have the truth, you do not have a leg to stand on in terms of how you go about living your life. And it is impossible to get better. The reason why atheists are so angry all the time and they're so mad and they have to prove themselves to everybody, that's the reason. Because they don't have the truth and they know the truth is out there if they just keep digging better. They're just afraid to. That's the other thing they don't want to say. They're afraid to dig more and more into it because they know they're wrong. They know they're wrong. And I think that is a big issue. It's a big problem. They know that they're wrong about what they believe. And they're too prideful to admit it, which is really, really unfortunate for them and for all of us, to be honest, because a lot of them are smart people. So all of this, I have a funny story to tell. So in the context of the truth, I want to tell a story real quick about my mother, who I love dearly. So Mom, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, this is going to be funny. So strap in. I'm not going to talk badly about you. I never talk badly about you because I love you. But I'm going to open up with a story that recently happened about my mother. So I was talking with my mom. My mom has run several businesses throughout her career. She's a physical therapist, got her doctorate degree. She's very smart. She's run a consulting business. She's run a seminar company. She's run an independent physical therapy practice now. She's tried to open a bunch of things related to the special needs community before. She's awesome. She's a rock star. She's really, really well-versed in all this sort of thing. So my mom, in one of my previous offers in terms of helping people get businesses off the ground, I let her into my school community because I wanted my mom to have the knowledge that I'd gotten from all the people that I've paid tens of thousands of dollars to get my coaching from. And so I'm like, well, I'm not going to charge my mom, so I'll let my mom in for free, and hopefully she can get some value out of the things that I've had in there to help her build this new venture that she's going to do, which is her independent physical therapy practice. Movement matters. physical therapy, by the way. Kristen M. Lacrosse on Facebook, on Instagram. Check her out, please. If you're in the Northeast Ohio area and you would like to talk with her, go to my mom. She's the best. She has experimented on me, and she has inflicted a lot of pain on me over the years, so you do not have to. So you're welcome, and I will take a 7% referral fee from my mother when she sees this. Now, on to the more important thing. So I remember there was a specific instance with a guy who I love, one of my clients inside of this. He actually re-upped for me for the rest of the year, which is great. So shout out to this client. When you listen to this, I know that you probably will listen to this, so shout out to you. And so he recently re-upped for me for the year. He's one of, if not my favorite clients I've ever worked with in my entire life. He's awesome. He's crushing it, does all the things that I tell him to do in a way that is beneficial to him. I think he's got a killer offer. He's got a killer business. He's going to make a lot of money if he puts himself in that domain. However, that being said, I'm also very demanding with my clients, and I'm hard on my clients in some ways because I think that's what a coach should do. A coach needs to be hard on people, not mean to people. They need to be hard on people. They need to coach people hard because my coach, who just won a high school football state championship in Ohio, which is a very hard thing to do, and one of the best football states in the country, he made practices for us so hard, and I think all good coaches do this. They make practice so hard for their players that when they get into a game type scenario, nothing phases them. Nothing phases them. Douse the ball in water. They crank up music really loud. They yell at you. They scream at you. They make you run, do all these type of things so that when you're in the game and adversity hits, you're not even phased at this point. It's almost like going into the military. When they take you through boot camp, it's like, wow, okay, nothing's going to phase me now. I've gone through something really, really hard. And so I remember, this person who I'm discussing, one of my clients, he threw something inside of my school community I had at the time that was, shall I say, not up to par for what I was expecting to him. And I responded very curtly and said, dude, this is not good. You need to come back and give me something better than this because this is not good. And my mom screenshots this, and she texts me the next day and says this long paragraph about, Sam, you need to be nicer to this person. You need to, why did you say this to this person? And I said, to give him a reality check because he needed it. And I want him to get better. My job is not to be nice. My job is to be a coach and do my job. And lo and behold, he's my best client. This is not a told you so to my mom, but it was the check that we needed to have with each other from client to coach persona. Again, all that stuff is down below, calendly.com/realsamlax if you're interested. But these type of reality checks are needed. And so I think the hard reality, going off the point that we just made about truth, and the ultimate question you need to ask yourself when you are getting into a conflict with someone, when you think someone is being quote unquote mean to you, the question you need to ask yourself is a very brutal one, but it's a very necessary one. Are they being mean or do I suck? Are they being mean to you or do you suck? Because more than likely, it's the latter. It's a you problem. It's not a them problem. It's a you problem. Now, this is a tough pill to swallow, and the data never lies, particularly when it comes to your own improvement. So if you have a lot of, I use this example all the time. Mark Manson said this once, and I've never forgotten it. If you are a man and you have been rejected by 100 women and you have no success dating, you can have two options. One of them is rational, one of them is irrational. You can point your finger at all 100 of those women and say, all of these nasty things that men say about women, whether it's you're this, you're that, you're modern women this, oh, I'm so much worth it, I'm a king, this, that, whatever. Or you can say, it's probably me. Probably need to not be a fat ass. I probably need to get better in conversating with people, with women especially. I need to improve my image. I need to improve the way that I talk to people. I need to improve my emotional intelligence. I need to heal. I need to go seek out something to get rid of my trauma, whatever it might be. You need to improve yourself because your results are a direct correlation with how you present yourself and how you improve yourself. Your improvement is going to be the greatest asset to your future resources, to your future life, to your future dating potential. It is all on you. And this brings me to a point where when it comes to getting better, you need to be able to take your emotions out of it. And so even though they may not be saying nice things to you, more often than not, it doesn't matter nearly as much as you becoming the person that you need to be. Terrence Fletcher in the movie Whiplash has one of my favorite quotes in a movie ever. And by the way, Terrence Fletcher in that movie is a monster. I'm not trying to affirm Terrence Fletcher at all in terms of, what he needs to do and everything like that, and how he should have been to poor Miles Teller's character. I forget what his name is at this point, but Terrence Fletcher's name I'll remember forever, where it's at the end of the movie. I won't spoil it, but it's at the end of the movie where he is talking in a bar with Miles Teller after they have this big falling out. And Miles Teller is this very, very talented drummer at this music school. And Terrence Fletcher, played by J.K. Simmons, who was brilliant in that job. I believe he won the Academy Award, or he should have won the Academy Award for that. Damien Chazelle directed it. It's a fantastic film. And he was incredibly emotionally abusive to all of his students. He got great results from his students, but he just pushed his students beyond their capabilities, beyond their limits. And he had one student commit suicide because of it. Like, it was a big thing. And so he gets in this big falling out. And so they're talking afterwards. And Miles Teller asks him, hey, what is it worth it? Was it worth it? Like, what if someone does do something drastic like that? Like, wouldn't you feel guilty? Wouldn't you feel this? Wouldn't you feel that? And J.K. Simmons kind of looks at him and he says, there are no two words in the English language more dangerous than good job. And I heard that line and I said, whoa. First of all, don't believe that's all true. But the point is, if you just affirm yourself with no desire to get better, without acknowledging that you might be weaker than you probably believe that you are, that you might be less effective at doing what you need to do than you are, you're never going to get the results that you want. You're never going to be great at anything. You're never going to be good at anything. You're never going to have the results you want in life if you cannot nut up and be honest about how you are progressing in your own life. You will never be that way ever with somebody, with yourself, with other people. You will never have that happen for you. You will stagnate. You will stop growing. You will stop becoming the person you need to be for the life that you want to have. You will stop being that person. And I don't want that to happen to anyone watching this video, but you need to know, you need to understand that if you are not honest with yourself, if you do not look yourself in the mirror and slap yourself across the face and say, what am I doing? Then you will never improve. And you don't deserve the life that you want, by the way. That's a hard truth to swallow. If you cannot come to terms with what you need to do to get better, you deserve to have a bad life. You deserve to have bad results because you are so entitled that you do not want to take the steps to improve yourself physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially, whatever. And you think that everyone should cater to you? No. That's not how that works. Not how it works, Home Slice. You have to do the work. There is nothing around the work. There is nothing around it. The truth will set you free. And the truth is sometimes really hard to swallow. So, how should you do this? So, this is why I think you should tell people that they suck. This is why you should tell people that they suck. 5 things you can do to get better. And honestly, you need to understand, Jordan Peterson said this once and it really stuck with me. You need to understand the alternative of what happens if you keep getting worse. If you're in this kind of rut that I just talked about in terms of, you really can't find a way to improve, you can't find a way to get better, you can't find a way to understand yourself, blah, 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 whatever it's going to be. You need to understand what happens if you keep going down this route. You need to see what happens if you spiral. You need to have a heaven and a hell drawn out. If you understand what can happen if you choose to get better and get worse, you need to aim towards heaven, not towards hell. And you need to have both of those drawn out. I did it once for myself, and man, it was so damn scary, the hell that I drew out for myself. And when I was in really bad shape, right before I created the Value Economics movement, before I pulled myself out of that, created Value Economics Academy, my companies, my books, all the things, I was in rough shape. But the way I was able to pull out of it was that I got honest with myself. And I was able to orient myself away from the hell that I was going into in order to make strides in my life to get myself better. So I wanted to get just 5 actionable things as we kind of close here to get people who are maybe in that spot to get better. I am not diminishing you. I'm not demeaning you. I'm not saying that you have no right to get better. You have every right to get better, but you need to take action. You need to get out and get off your ass and do something. So the first thing you need to do if you are in this type of a rut, you need to get help. You need to get help. More importantly, you need to get in community with a lot of people, not a ton of people, but a good amount of people who can support you on your own way. So people, I think now especially, they die in isolation. Quietly, softly, whatever. You die in isolation. You need to have people in your life to get around you, for you to get around, rather, in order to make sure that you are progressing properly. People that can pour into you, and you can reciprocate that and pour into them and help them with everything that you are doing. If you are doing this by yourself, you're going to fall on your face. You need help from somebody, whether that's paying for coaching, whether that's getting into a mentorship or a mastermind, or you're joining a gym even, and we'll talk about that in a second, but you need to be around other people. So many people, men in particular, hear me on this. You cannot do it by yourself. You need people. You need people to be by your side so that you can start to win. And that's going to be the second one. The second thing, you need to find an easy way to get wins. If you are not winning at all in life right now, which is where a lot of people are, unfortunately, and I sympathize with that, you need to find an easy way to win. And the way that I always recommend doing this is through fitness. My friend Michael Montahano was at my mastermind a couple weekends ago, going to be in his wedding in about a month. I'm very honored by that. He is a fitness coach. He's done it for a very long time. He's helped hundreds of people get great results. So I have Michael Mott Fit on Instagram. If you want to go out and check him out, I highly recommend it. But the cool thing about fitness is that fitness is, I like to call it, is like the gateway drug to all other personal development types, which I think is true. And so you need to get momentum on your side before you can progress in a meaningful way to get to where you want to go. So I recommend fitness because fitness is a visible way, it's an easy way, and it's something that you can do in order to understand where your bread is buttered. And you feel better afterwards. Peter Attia has talked about this several times before, where it's like, if you were to package a pill that lowers stress and decrease anxiety and depression, all these things, you would invent exercise. Exercise is a magic pill, it turns out. It's not Ozempic, by the way. Don't do Ozempic. Ozempic cheats you in multiple ways, not just physically, but also mentally, more importantly, probably. And so there is that recommendation, which I highly recommend. Go to a gym. Doesn't have to be Planet Fitness, whatever. Join a gym. Lift weights. Run on a treadmill. Lift heavy stuff up and down. That's what I do. It works like a charm. Go to a martial arts gym. I box 3 days a week, 6 classes. It's awesome. It's great. Punch something, get something out of your system. Do something regularly where you can find an easy way to win. And then number 3, you got to find a way to win often, which means getting a routine down. And you need to fit as many wins in your day as you possibly can to give your arguments teeth and legs to stand on. So your day, my day is set up where I win all throughout my day. I have small wins all throughout my day. I write, I read, I work out, I talk to someone that I enjoy talking to, I work, I get good information in my head, I eat good food, I am around people that I love, I feel like I'm connecting with God, I'm reading scripture, I'm doing all these things. Your day should be so stacked with wins, up and up and up and up and down your calendar. You should be winning all day. So when you find a way to win, you need to find a way to win more often than you are right now. So getting a routine down is critical. I have a great video on that. It's down on my YouTube. Scroll down to the previous era of before the Value Economics show if you want to go ahead and see that video. But you need to find a way to win often, because if you are able to find a way to win consistently and win often throughout your day, your mind will start to shift. Your mind will start to change. You will see all of the things that are in your area, your periphery, your whatever you want to call it, and you will start to win far more often than you are right now, because you will have it in your schedule. You will literally be scheduled to win throughout the entire day, which is awesome. And you should be really, really purposeful about that. I stack my day, man, so often I win so much throughout my day, and I'm not even trying to brag here, but I have wins scheduled throughout my day. Get my Bible reading done. I pray. I work out. I eat a good, healthy breakfast. I work for a couple hours. I read. I write. I talk to my parents. I do all these things, whatever. And it's awesome. And you need to find a way to stack those wins throughout the day to develop a winner's mindset. It begins up here. Whether you're a winner or a loser, it begins in your mind. So find a way to win often. Be grateful. That's number 4. People have no idea how lucky they are that they even have the opportunity to think about improving. So that always helps. It matters to know that you're grateful for things. People that know that this does not get to happen everywhere, that people are starving in the other parts of the world, that there's kids in sub-Saharan Africa without water right now, It's a pretty damn humbling experience. And the people that I know that are really winning big in life are doing it because they know that they have the opportunity to. And if they were in any other place in the world, other than America, Western country, whatever, I think America probably only now, unfortunately, but fortunately for us. If you have the opportunity to even think about self-improvement, you are blessed. You're very blessed. So be grateful for that. Understand, get on your knees and pray to whatever higher power you pray to. If you don't have a higher power, get one. I highly recommend it. It's the best decision you can ever make in your life, especially if it's Jesus. But get on your knees and pray that you are able to think about improvement and you're not thinking about what I'm going to eat for my next meal. Is my drinking water going to give me dysentery? Any of the things that people have inside of their lives. Be grateful for being able to improve. And number 4, know your value. Or number 5, know your values. Gotta know your values. I have a whole program built on this. Value Economics Academy. Link down below. I'd love to talk to you about it. I have taught so many people the importance of values. That's the whole reason I created the show. Reason I bought this mic. Reason I bought this camera, a teleprompter, all these things. I want to teach people that living a value-oriented life is better because it is better. I don't think people would be watching this if it wasn't better. I don't think they would be watching it. And I don't think you would be watching it either. Values are the only way that you can make sense out of this crazy world that we live in. They're the only way that you can have a development in yourself that is value-oriented and life-giving for long periods of time, for your whole entire life, hopefully. Living a value-oriented life by knowing your values and sticking to your values, first and foremost. It's the way to go. I'm telling you, it's the way to go. If you want to learn more, Value Economics Academy down below. But just look them up. Look up what values are. Buy my book. Buy my ebook. Whatever. But get your values in alignment, people. You need to know your values. And that is going to be the 5th one that we're going to do in order to, if you want to improve your life, do those 5 things. I really, really recommend all of them. So that's the show for the week, guys. Thank you, everyone, for listening. So own the day, open your mind, and I'll see you guys next week.